Hello, I'm ABX2Cat and welcome back to the second channel video. Today I'm in Chicago, Illinois, United States. Probably didn't say that last bit, but you're pretty aware where Chicago is. But yeah, this I'm in Chicago and I was really upset because the machine took $20 off me and it wouldn't give it back because I don't have a US account to put it into, and I got locked outside my apartment. And I was like, you know, even though the US is a great place to visit for a whole bunch of reasons, I've been here 3 times in the past year, I think now, and even though it's great for a whole bunch of reasons, and I'm sure even if you live here, you know, you're entirely fine with this stuff, this is just how it is. If you are visiting the US, there are a lot of things that you'll probably hate, and I figured why not go over 7 of those things with today's video. So let's start, by the way, I hope you enjoy it. Let's start the very first one here, which is to do with all these things you're going to see in the background non-stop of this video, which I guess is true for lots of cities, but it's especially true here because transportation in America is not, well, I guess it's great if you have the one form of transport it's designed for, which is the car. So the automobile, the car, whatever you want to call it. By the way, going past the giant McDonald's, I've never seen one that big before. The automobile, the car, whatever you want to call it, is the primary form of transport, you know, the dominant form in every part of the US, minus, I think, New York City. It's like, you know, just below 50% of people, you know, drive a car as their primary form of transport. But that's still pretty crazy, the fact that everywhere besides one place, a car is the only way. And that means that everywhere, you know, besides like the top 20 cities, you will need a car to get around, like, because there's public transport, you know, in token form in most places, but it's generally pretty bad for the most part, and because it's considered to be pretty bad, that means that most people, you know, like, don't really want to use it because, oh, it's considered to be pretty bad, and therefore no one's put money into it because no one's using it, or, you know, less people are using it, you know, per person stuff, and this is just like an endlessly repeating cycle that's problematic because if you do decide to visit the US and you don't have a driver's license, or you don't have, like, I think you need a slight permit if you're here for more than a few days, or you don't want to rent a car because that's kind of expensive. If you don't want to deal with any of those, or if you want to, I think you can't rent a car if you're under 25 here or something like that. But yeah, basically, if you don't want to deal with all that sort of stuff, guess what? You have to deal with it anyway. And oh, let's cross the road quickly because it's like got 4 seconds left now. But yeah, so basically you have to deal with that stuff anyway. And even in the biggest cities like Chicago, this is the 3rd biggest city in the whole US. The very center is just non-stop gridlock during most hours because most people say, you know, even, you know, when there's this many fuss, there's 2.9 people in just the city limits. When there's that many people living here, still I'd like to drive a car because it's a little bit more convenient, which means they'll deal with this, you know, ridiculous traffic. And even when you know, there's like 5 lanes across, you're still not gonna be able to deal with it perfectly. And basically, cars make this giant mess, and everyone wants to drive them anyway because the public transport isn't necessarily amazing, which just creates this bigger and bigger growing problem, which is kind of annoying. And you know, you might argue that's okay because it developed naturally and that's just the way things are, but it didn't develop naturally because the reason our cars are so ubiquitous, because I think public transport used to be a big part of how the US grew. The Transcontinental Railway, I think even the Southern Railway, there was lots of big railways, and also streetcars were a big thing in pretty much every major city. Streetcars, by the way, the American term for trams for some reason. But yeah, they're really big things in most cities, right? But the way they actually all developed is because the car companies at the time bought shares in the streetcar companies and like slowly convinced them to shut down that way. It was basically somewhat dodgy in the first place, and that means it's not even a natural thing, it's just like a weird shady start to like this weird endless cycle that's just super frustrating if you don't ride a car. But I guess if you have a car, it's just about okay because it means the whole thing, you know, I guess the whole like economy, etc. is like driven around it, the whole city's planning is driven around it, which has some benefits, but if you don't, it sucks badly. So yeah, this means the second thing, which I'm not so fond of. Going to choose my words carefully, and there's people nearby me. When it comes to the US, because it is the taxes. Because when you pay for something, the taxes aren't built into it. So if you pick something up and it's $1, or the dollar menu at like a McDonald's or something, if you go to you know, you buy one of those things, or like what can you get on a dollar menu here? I don't know what actually is in America, but you know, like let's say you buy your cheeseburger and you're like, yeah, I've got my $1, let's go pay for it. Except no, that's not how it works here. Unlike VAT, which is the standard value-added tax, by the way. The standard in you know, European countries, and I think there's a lot of other countries that use a similar method where it's built in. The sales tax, which is the same thing, different name, and generally a lot lower, by the way, which is, I guess, positive in its own right, isn't built into the price. So, you know, you pick up your dollar thing, you have to go to the checkout, and oh, suddenly it's $1.07 or something, or $1.12, because they add there's often several layers of sales tax too, like, oh, this is the Illinois state tax, and then this is the Chicago one, and you end up with really random numbers that you almost couldn't calculate. Like, I guess if you were living here for long enough, you could work out, oh yeah, it's always an extra 13%. Let's do some maths in the store. Okay, we got $1.50. Let's add, what is that, like 19.5 cents to it. Again, it's kind of a mess, and because it's not worked for the checkout, it's super frustrating. And even though Canada does something similar, it's usually a lot simpler to work out, like 5 and then sometimes 7, sometimes 9%. In the US, it varies from state to state, city to city. I think sometimes like counties get, basically, it's a mess. It doesn't make too much sense, and it's not built into the price, which is very frustrating, especially if you're from like Europe, where it's just a built-in part of the price, which makes more sense personally. And the logic, by the way, in case you're curious behind this, is because it varies so much, and if they want to do promotions, like nationwide, they can just say, oh, it's $1, and then it'll be $1.12 or $1.07. But to me, at least, that just seems kind of, I don't know, like it shifts the burden to the consumer, which again is frustrating when they're allowed to sell something for $1. It should be like, oh, $1 including tax in most places, or something like that. Like it would just make more sense to me, because this way allows them to kind of misleading the advertised stuff for less than it will cost the consumer, which I don't really like personally. But yeah, that said, let's move on to the third thing I really don't like, and this one might seem petty or like a small thing, like, oh, toilets, okay, that's not a big deal. But no, toilets are a big deal because you use them sometimes. At least most people do. 50% of the population do anyway. But yeah, basically, toilets are something that are super frustrating, because the first thing, this is just all toilets, not just public toilets. The water level is so much higher. Like, there's a lot more water in there, which, as you can probably work out, like, has some benefits, I imagine. But it's also super, I guess, bad for reasons that if you're not used to it, basically, that's annoying by itself. You might say, okay, that's just a difference between cultures, whatever, have more water in your toilet, I'm not too bothered. But what does annoy me is public bathrooms, because even though most of the time you're going to use them when they're empty, at least that's my experience, if you do ever go to one with other people in, the gap between the door and the stall, so like, where, there's usually some amount of gap because there's a hinge and stuff, you need to have that there. It's giant. There's like a gap that big or something, so you can make eye contact with the people in there, they can make eye contact with you, or if you're in there, you can, people will see you, and they might even look because they're curious. And it's like, what is this system? Because I'm just kind of randomly walking around, but what is this system? Why is there why is it so ridiculous that you can see people through that? Do you want to have conversations with people on the other side? I don't want to. I'd rather like pretend that I'm not here and like, I don't get that at all. But then also, as well as the giant gap there's also a giant gap between the floor and the stool, and then the stool and the ceiling. So underneath the floor, you might have heard the scandals about the US people like sticking their feet under the stalls or something. You can see why. They're big enough that you could stick your whole your whole legs down there if you wanted to. But as well as the giant gap between the floor and the thing, which again, I guess it's like half as high as that random mailbox. Do people actually put things in mailboxes? Interesting. I know. I haven't actually seen one until that one's just there. But yeah, basically, as well as that, but below the thing, above it, it's really high too. So if you stand up, you can see people. And I don't get why there is this obsession with seeing people while they're in the stalls. Because if you're in the men's bathroom, you know what you're doing there. And why do people need to see that? I don't know. But that is the third thing. Not a big fan of. The fourth thing is the water quality in general, because water quality in the US is significantly low. I think it varies from place to place a lot because it's under the control of either the state, the city, etc., etc. But because in certain places it is so bad that it's like genuinely poisonous to drink. Like again, it varies so much that you can't really make a broad statement. But water quality as a whole is significantly lower than you'd expect in like Europe and stuff. It's not like dangerously low. Again, in most places, I believe there was a big scandal in Flint, Michigan, where they put lead in the water because it was cheaper than not putting lead in the water. I don't get how that's a decision anyone can make, but yeah, scandals like that happen from time to time because why put tax money into either public transport, or why put tax money into making the water not poisonous. Apparently that's a decision people get to make, and it's one that's kind of annoying because it means that the water, it's inconsistent. You can't really drink it if you use the regular standards. But even when you go to the store, this is like the next level of water being bad. If you go to the store and you're like, I'll just buy some water there, most water brands, the big ones from Coke and Pepsi, Dasani and I forget what Coke's one is, or maybe that's Coke ones, but the big water brands are just tap water from the local area, or sometimes some worse than tap water from the local area. In fact, oftentimes like that. And why is there a system where you can have bad water from your taps, or you can go out and buy water which is supposedly good, except no, that water's actually pretty bad too. I don't get it at all. That's just a little frustrating bit about the US, I guess. The fact that tap water might just poison you, and you can't avoid it if you go to the store. I mean, I do look into the brands and make sure, like, oh, Fiji water actually is from Fiji, apparently. Maybe buy that, or like, I think Smart Water's okay, but I think Smart Water might be the Coke one, actually. But yeah, basically, you have to like look into the brands before you buy water, just if you want to like have your regular standards. And it's probably fine if you don't, but it's super frustrating that, there's even that level of risk. And yeah, that's the fourth thing. Fifth thing, not a big fan of. The next one is the measuring system, the lack of metric. And this is not too big a deal as like a visitor because it doesn't come up too often. But just everything is measured in miles and feet and stone and furlongs, whatever these other random measurements are. And basically every other country in the world besides the US, Liberia and Myanmar, or Burma, I don't know which one the correct name is. Every other country in the world uses the exact same system, the metric system, because it's easier to use once you learn it. Like, I think there was an advantage to Imperial for farming because, you know, a foot's just about as big as 3 foot or something like that. I don't actually know what a foot is, but, you know, it makes sense because, you know, you don't have a measuring system. Now we have measuring devices. Metric is just the way to go. And basically the reasoning that it wasn't officially adopted, the reason it wasn't officially, ever like put into real standards, is because, it actually was officially adopted, but it never came into full use because, you know, the cost of business was deemed to be in like it was something like, you know, tens of millions of dollars. It's like, really, tens of millions of dollars? That was the big deal that made us not do this, because the amount that's been lost as a result since has been significantly higher. And basically the reason it hasn't changed ever since then is just because, like, oh yeah, well, I don't know if we really want to. Oh geez, I crossed the road quickly. I don't know if we really want to do it now because we've gone through all this time. And basically, yeah, they use an outdated measuring system that it's just worse. I mean, Fahrenheit and Celsius is like an argumentable, but everything else is just easier and metric, and it hasn't been adopted because why would we adopt it? Because why? And it just means everything's kind of tricky if you want to work out like the distance to somewhere or the temperature or this or that, and it's just a random difference that's thrown into the world for no good reason besides like, oh yeah, it was political at the time and now we're just kind of stuck with it, and that's kind of frustrating. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing, which I guess most people hate if you live in the US, which is the roads, because, you know, this kind of comes into the cars thing, but basically getting across any road in any city or really anywhere else can be very frustrating. So bear in mind, this is a normal street. Every single street I've crossed so far, this is just one of those. Like, you know, between the city blocks, they're pretty standard street lengths, you know, same as you'd expect from any other grid city in any other country, but because, you know, most US cities are grid cities. That's actually that's just the like development, whether you like those or not. Again, preference, but not what isn't preference is the thickness of the road. So like, this is a regular one. This is 5 lanes. You can probably count them if you want to. I think that's 5 lanes, and they're 5 like American lanes, which I think is slightly bigger than other countries because, again, American trucks or whatever. But yeah, basically, they're 5 lanes thick minimum. It seems to be in a city, which means to get across, like, if I wanted to like run across this, I won't do it on a video because it's so risky. Like, there's just so much that could go on there. Like, look at that. And basically, getting across the road could be impossible. You have to use the lights, which I think is one of the parts of the reason why jaywalking's a crime, which is, by the way, just crossing where there are no lights. You won't ever get fined for it if you know, like, basically it's not actually a crime, but it's like, oh yeah, you're really meant to do that, because it's so dangerous not to. Like, it's so hard to cross any road anywhere, which breaks up the flow if you want to just walk from somewhere to the other, because you're constantly stopping at every set of lights, waiting, slippery because it's snowing, waiting for, you know, like a random signal to come and make it better. And it's just super, super bizarre. And this, you know, 5 lanes is like the starting most places. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, here's a random, like in front of the White House, 6-lane road. Behind the White House, I think it was 10. It might be 8, like an 8-lane just random highway. That means that, you know, when you press the lights and the stuff goes across, like, even if you got 20 seconds, that's actually like, you have to walk at a pretty brisk pace to get across this massive, see that, do you like that massive stretch? And it's just a little bit crazy. So yeah, road lengths, getting around, super tricky, not a big fan. The final thing though, that you'll probably not like about the US, or hate if you will, as I believe the title says. I don't know what the title is right now, but is actually the weather. So right now it's -6, -4, something like that. In Celsius, the objectively better, no, again, Celsius versus Fahrenheit, you can argue. I think Celsius has a lot of, it's better for science, and therefore probably better to teach than like, oh yeah, because this one's better for, you know, weather very slightly, because there's lots of reasons. But anyway, Celsius versus Fahrenheit is the one big thing. But so it's like -4 below freezing by quite a bit, basically. It was -8 when I landed in New Jersey about a week ago, a little bit less than a week ago now. And you know, this is super cold in the winter, but then it gets super hot in the summer. These same cities that are like -8 now go to like +30, +40, and with the exception of, like, you know, California and Arizona, the deep south desert places, you're going to have these wild weather swings. It's an extreme weather on both sides, which again, I just have not experienced being from Europe. And even when I've gone to like the colder places like the Baltics and what's the country, Slovakia, you know, they're super, super cold in the winter. Even then, they're super cold was like, oh, It went down to -1 or -2 today, whereas here like -8, -10. If you go a little bit further north, minus like 20 or something like that. And it's crazy is what I'm saying, but then it also goes crazy on the other side. And extreme weather is just a thing about the US that you'll probably have if you visit. But yeah, there are 10 things. Hope you all enjoyed the video. I kind of roamed around semi-aimlessly, and I think it's a tiny bit lost right now. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. But second channel, I have some more videos coming on the channel. Got one about a vlog for the flights, and also might have a video about passports tomorrow. So we'll see you in those. Having a great time so far. Thank you to everyone who's either said nice things or, like, you know, offered to do this or that. I appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time. Second channel, don't care. Goodbye.